All right, we're going to go ahead and jump into this. Welcome. Thank you for joining. This is the inaugural edition of Weaveworks Office Hours. We're going to do this on a weekly basis moving forward. My name is Joe Dahlquist. I am VP of Product Marketing at Weaveworks. I'm joined by Steve Fraser. Steve, did you want to introduce yourself really quick and tell everybody what you do here?
Sure. My name is Steve Fraser. I'm a principal solution architect covering the North America region. So my responsibilities are typically pre-sales, but fun fact about me, I actually got promoted off the consulting team. So I'm also kind of the man in the room who's also lived and breathed FluxCD with some of our largest customers, from even the small, from crypto to the largest of our banks. So
fantastic.
I have to bring a little bit more value in that area.
Totally. Steve's lived in the trenches and fought the hard battles over the years, and it's got a lot of knowledge and experience that he's going to leverage to be able to answer some questions that you guys have got today. If you've got questions at any time, throw them into the webinar chat. I'm keeping that open and looking at it. So this office hours event is all about an open ability to ask questions, get answers directly from experts like Steve. Next week we'll have one of Steve's colleagues, Daryl, that'll be joining us, and we'll be talking about GitOps Assured and our open source GitOps UI for Flux. Today we're going to be talking about Flux and a new solution that we've launched, which is a Flux plugin for Backstage. Backstage is the hottest, coolest thing going right now. Everybody in cloud native is clamoring to be able to integrate or extend or work with Backstage. And, it was an absolute natural thing for us to join that as well. And you can get that Flux plugin from the backstage.io website, from the list of plugins there. If you're using Backstage, if you're using Flux, it is an absolute 1000% no brainer to use this. Again, it's totally free, completely open source, and helps you better visualize and get granular information about all of the resources that are managed by Flux right there in the Backstage developer portal, where you can have a great experience. It's been a big year for Flux. This time last year, Flux was an incubating project in the CNCF, and a couple of months later, around the turn of the year, Flux graduated. Then in July of this year, we launched Flux 2.0 as a general availability release, and just about a month or so ago, added the Flux plugin for Backstage. So it's been a banner year for Flux, and we're excited to be able to show you what we've been working on and answer some questions that you've got, whether it's about this Flux plugin for Backstage or any other Flux or GitOps related topic. Feel free to ask, and we'll do our best to give you great answers on those. So with all that said, Steve, maybe you want to talk a little bit about your experience or some of the use cases you've seen with this Flux plugin for Backstage, and then when you feel ready to, let's give everybody a quick demo.
Yeah. So I would say the Backstage and the Backstage portal really kind of falls into that classification of that developer-centric portal, that developer-centric view of the world. Your application is important to you as an individual, and then you want to see your application deployed on its various clusters and its various states, and then also see kind of that commit chain, so where this deployed, when it deployed. So it's that developer-centric view of the world, instead of, let me say, querying applications across clusters and see what clusters are viewed. You're thinking, okay, this is my application, this is my component. What is the state of it? And then then we can go ahead. What are the issues centric around this Backstage? So that's kind of the persona that targets this specific area. And then I want to talk a little bit about the relationship between the Backstage plugin and our GitOps and GitOps Enterprise solution. Our GitOps Enterprise and our GitOps Enterprise solution kind of is that linkage, that drill down pane from Backstage down into that specific area. We've got two different types of configuration. We have the GitOps and the GitOps Enterprise. If you want to be a platform engineer and you want to kind of start from that FluxCD primitives, you kind of maybe start from the GitOps Enterprise UI and move down. But if you want to start from the application view and open up the UI and then directly drill down from that application down to your Flux primitive, that's kind of the route that you take versus the other route. I mean, of course, with GitOps and with GitOps, you can do some filtering, but that's how we view the world, and that's how we see a lot of our customers utilizing this brand new plugin that we're offering.
Sounds like a nice developer experience to be able to have largely, one place, one pane of glass, as people like to say it, to accomplish a lot of your work, but then, not have to context switch between windows, between tabs all the time, like having this kind of linking capability to be able to quickly get the information that you need. Sounds like it's a pretty smooth experience.
Yep. Yes, it is. Okay. Now that I've kind of given you some of that background, I'm going to go ahead and kind of navigate and start the small little demo that I'm going to do. I expect this demo to be between 5 to 10 minutes long. And then we can kind of answer the questions and kind of talk about FluxCD. So this is kind of your normal components view in Backstage. Here, these are all defined in Git, and if I were to go push edit, it would drag me all the way to my repository, where I can see my definition of my component. This definition of my component, we're going to be looking at a catalog service or a component called pod info. From here, we can see that we have a couple good annotations. We have the Backstage Kubernetes ID. That is that center point of how we define that component underneath it. So if I navigate back to Backstage and go ahead and click into the component. So what we've done here is in our Backstage implementation, we've entered the deployments view directly on the overview page, and this gives me the list of my application deployment. So this could be like a customization or a home release. And then we add additional detail around that home release inside of this. So you get the information such as the Backstage, the name of the home release, as well as, so this would be namespace plus home release name. We also have the cluster that this is on. This is on our dev team cluster. We have the repo included as well, the source, and if it's in a ready state, as far as has it been successfully deployed or not. Additionally, we have when it was last updated, and we have a sync button as well. And this kicks off the additional Flux reconciliation loop that will go ahead and trigger a reconciliation for a customized Flux object, or a home release object. So what's the difference between a home release and a customization for you new Flux users? Customization is standard Kubernetes customization, which will be just like a group of resources that can be applied. A home release is a declarative home installation. So from here, I can see that my Backstage, my pod info application is deployed in my Backstage namespace. I'll go ahead and click on it, which will take me into GitOps and GitOps Enterprise. So from this perspective, this view is the same between the open source view and the enterprise view. From here, we can see you can open it up and get more information. You can see additional details around this and even attach additional metadata as well, such as URL of the application, so you can kind of trace it out to your end user experience. Now down below, we have some additional labels on here. Now these are quite important from the FluxCD plus Backstage level. So what this does is it gives this backstage.o/Kubernetes ID pod info, gives that traceability that I showed before. You have that component definition, and then you have the label that's set on the home release resource that does that tracing between each other. So down below, we see a deployment, a service as well. Now, if we take a look at the events, you'll see when it was last reconciled, if I were to suspend and resume. Now, if I go to the graph view, it takes me through the life cycle of this application. It shows me from the home repository all the way down to the pod itself, and I can go ahead and click it and see this pod show up again. While I'm in this pod view, I would also like to note that we are tagging the information for this Kubernetes ID all the way from like that top level, which is that Helm release, all the way down to that pod info. So when I get further in the Backstage plugin, you can see that we have that traceability and you can see the logs. And we do this through a configuration we would call a post render, where we're attaching and populating that metadata down below. You also have your dependencies, your YAML, and you also have your violations. And this would be kind of that policy view of the world that we have for our policy agent. Our policy agent is open source as well, and it's based upon OPA. Now, as I navigate back to the Backstage instance, I can go ahead and select. We created a whole new Flux pane where we have the same information detailed from the Helm release. We can see a Helm repository, which will link me all the way to the Helm repository as well, and I can see the source and its reconciliation status across the board. We can see that it's currently synced, and you can see what the commit hash looks like for that as far as the SHA. You also have your Git repository, and of course our new source store that has been introduced rather recently, our OCI repository source store that allows manifests to be stored in Docker images. Of course, that's already been around, but it allows Flux to kind of tap into that data source and reconcile that resource and deploy manifests in that OCI repository. As well as there's sync buttons on each of these different resources and its view of the world. So this kind of gives you a good overview. So of course we've configured additional details that you can see. You can navigate. We'd used our GitHub instance and our GitHub configuration to kind of add that repository additional detail into our instance. And as you go to your Kubernetes cluster, we can see that we have the deployment included in it. And we show that raw YAML. We can see that this information was installed by Flux, and we've attached the Kubernetes ID value for this. So we have that traceability all the way down to the deployment in the pod. And if I open this up, I can see the pod running, and of course go all the way down to the log view and kind of get the log for this application underneath. This kind of shows the traceability of the Helm release all the way down, how you tag that stuff and populate it up into GitOps Enterprise and GitOps, and you had that traceability from Backstage to Flux, and take in mind that drill down functionality is if you configure GitOps or GitOps Enterprise, you don't necessarily need to configure that in order to make this plugin work. You can just use FluxCD, in which case you're going to see there won't be a link here, but you'll see the same information underneath it. So I hope that gives you a good overview, and I think that kind of concludes my demo here today, Joe.
It was an awesome demo and a really cool plugin. I personally love the drill through, or like this deep linking capability between Backstage and the UI that we've built for Flux. There is the first question that actually came in is that Weave GitOps UI open source? And the answer is yes. We have a open source observability UI that is available to anybody and everybody. You can go to weave.works and find it in our open source projects page. And it's really easy to extend Flux with that observability UI and then get some of this drill through capability that Steve was showing in this demo. So thanks for that first question. It really looks like it smooths out the developer experience. And again, if you were joining a little bit late, what we just showed was the Flux plugin for Backstage. If you're using Flux, if you're using Backstage, again, this is a no-brainer. You should absolutely get that plugin from the Backstage.io website. There's a link to the GitHub repo for it, along with a nice README and some technical information for it as well. If you've got questions about this Flux plugin for Backstage, or about Flux, or about Weave GitOps, or about GitOps in general, please do send that right on through and we'll answer those. Our office hours is going to run for about another 15 minutes, and we're happy to answer any questions that you've got about anything Weaveworks or Flux related. So, feel free to jump on in there with any questions that you've got. You can raise your hand using the button at the bottom of your screen. You can ask in the chat, or you can use the Q&A panel. I've got all of those open and happy to field questions that you guys might have. Let's look here and see what else we've got that people are asking. All right, we've got a question asking if, Steve, if you could explain a little bit more what an OCI repository is.
Yep. Yeah. I'd love to even tell a little bit of why this technology was even developed in the first place. So what we found with some of our, I would say, quote unquote, some of our largest customers, they wanted to kind of move on from the quote unquote having your configuration only in Git. This happened to be like for replication, or so you want to have your configuration in one data center, another data center, and you want it to be localized, or your SLA around Git. That means your production systems cannot rely on Git. And this does come up through our process. And one thing we even want to say, sometimes we joke around, and we're maybe doing a little bit more image ops these days than GitOps. But it's actually so that those requirements came out of our largest customer. So an OCI repository is a definition for a like a Docker or an OCI image that stores manifests in it. So if I were to open up this OCI repository and kind of drill into it, I can walk a little bit through down the manifest. And I think this will give you a better picture of what the technology is kind of used for. So if you take a look at an OCI repository, this is a traditional Docker image. And what it is, it gives a URL. This is an image, like a Docker image or an OCI image that is storing a set of manifests. This allows you to kind of move from Git to Docker image stores or OCI image stores for Flux to read from and apply a given manifest. So this is this is a URL with a image store location. And now if I navigate back kind of to the details, it doesn't look like we have an image store that's necessarily relying on this. But you apply a customization just like you would a Git repository customization, where you apply a specific path, and it will just use the OCI image as a data source that will store a set of images. I hope that helps. If not, please ask follow-up questions if I wasn't clear.
No, really cool. We do have one question that we're going to get to in just 1 second, but I noticed that you've got something in there called cosign, which adds some really cool functionality to be able to sign and verify these images as well. Did you want to touch on that for just a second?
Yeah. So this request comes a lot out of our financial services type of big banks, type of customers. And what they want to do is they want to ensure the integrity of that image has came from them in their pipeline when they're at deploy time. So what image signing kind of allows a lot of these big businesses or organizations to do is to sign a set of manifests as a given product, as a product from that organization. And then when they go to deploy time, they go ahead and verify that that image is from their pipeline and valid and the security is there. of that manifest contact. So that stops some of that min in the middle conversations about that attack vector that allows that additional layer of security outside of just securing the image store in general.
Very cool. Thanks, Steve. That sounds like an amazing solution for security, compliance, and regulatory requirements. I mean, that sounds like a really neat capability. So we've got a question from an attendee, and the question is, does the Backstage plugin support the TF controller integration to be able to deploy infrastructure components or modules from the Backstage catalog?
So actually, I do not believe we have Terraform objects included in the Backstage plugin today. I think it's just Flux primitives currently. But I'd have to. It's a good topic, and I'll bring that up with product and see what our roadmap looks like there for the long term.
Absolutely,
but not
that does sound like it makes sense.
Yeah, but
great. All right, we answered that one live. And anybody else got some questions that they want to throw our way? I'm not seeing any come in just yet. Is there anything else that you might want to show, and just the kind of the general Weave GitOps UI that is something that's getting a lot of interest and attention from folks these days? Got just a few more minutes before we're going to wrap this up.
Sure. So of course, one of the good things. So we kind of talked about that persona of I'm a developer. I'm a developer, and I kind of want to think of my application. My application is my world, and then I want to work backwards underneath that. And now I want to kind of talk about this other persona, this Flux engineer, this GitOps engineer or platform engineer that's really working on cert manager or that second level of where they're really querying clusters to kind of see what the state of that is. This is our application page. Just kind of fulfills that view of the world for Weave GitOps, Weave GitOps Enterprise. Weave GitOps has it locally to that cluster, and Weave GitOps as a multi-cluster view. So I think Joe was mentioning that it is available in open source, but our enterprise product kind of has that multi-cluster view, and our open source product has that single cluster view. So from here, this is kind of, I'm searching all of my clusters. Now here we have like additional query elements. We can do pod, and then it's got one information. Now I can do app. So I'm starting to kind of query down to what I'm looking for. And at the top of the view, we have our unhealthy applications. And then down below, we have our healthy applications. So what the UI is doing is it's surfacing your pain points, your issues, your problem childs up first, up to the top of the view. So when you first load Weave GitOps, you get to see what is breaking and versus what is running underneath. So now down below, we have that same view where then you can kind of come in here and you go, oh, looks like my Flagger dependency is not running yet, and it's a dependency. What does that look like? Now I can go to my dependencies views, and I can go to this customization and see what's going on from here. Oh, it looks like in this case, I'm actually having a policy webhook failure that I'll have to resolve. But this kind of shows that you start from one location and you kind of drill down, and then you move to your dependencies, and there you are. This is where your problem child is from all of your applications that aren't running. And this helps you kind of link down your chain. And gives that GitOps visibility for your platform engineer, where you can go from one application to another and see how that works.
Cool. Talk about making it easier to deliver on that whole you build it, you run it thing, right? Like for an application developer to be able to see the state of their app, right? What version is running in prod? Do I have any dependencies that are throwing errors? And to be able to troubleshoot those and fix them. Of course, you're going to have, the application operators or kind of, the DevOps side of that equation that's going to be really familiar with tools like this. But, it's also really cool for developer parents to be able to see their problem children, like smack dab right there. That's cool.
Yeah. And I find, and this is really kind of unfortunate, from like the GitOps visibility perspective. Sometimes you don't need a UI. You understand you need a UI until you're neck deep in failures, and you got 6 clusters deployed, and you're not really sure what's breaking, what's not coming. So sometimes this comes in last. But it does provide some really useful debugging information when you're kind of operating at scale and you start to run a GitOps distribution, when you're provisioning infrastructure with our TF controller, and you're also deploying applications, you're doing continuous delivery with Flagger. You've got all these things kind of flying around underneath you. You need that visibility to see what the status is and what's moving and why, and what's not moving and why is it not moving.
You're right. It pulls all of this sometimes disparate data together into a single place where you can get answers to a lot of your burning questions, challenges, problems, errors that you're receiving, rather than having to bounce back and forth between different tools in your chain and running CLI commands. I mean, these days there is so much focus on developer experience and so much focus on developer productivity. And we know that one of the ways we're able to help our customers spend more time building better code is by reducing the amount of cognitive load, reducing the sprawling tool chain that developers have to deal with, minimizing the number of interfaces that they have to view to be able to get their work done. So a UI like this that sits on top of a powerful tool like Flux, it's really like icing on the cake. And again, there's an open source version of this. So if you've been tinkering with Flux, but you haven't been using a UI that helps in some of these areas, go to Weave.works, check out the Weave GitOps open source project from the main menu, and extend Flux with this killer tool. It also, as Steve showed in the demo a little bit earlier, really rounds out and expands that nice developer experience when you're working in Backstage as your internal developer portal as well. So that takes us to the end of our inaugural session of Weaveworks office hours. Thanks everybody, to all of our attendees, for joining. We are recording these sessions. We will send them out to you as a recording. That way you can take a look at any of this information a little bit more closely. Invite you to attend the same BAT channel, same BAT time next week, 10 to 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. On the 25th, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Weave GitOps Enterprise and other great things that ourselves, our customers, and the whole Flux friends and family and community are doing with these great solutions. So if anybody's got one last question that they want to tap in there, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we'll give it about 30 more seconds and hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and happy Halloween if you're celebrating it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Steve. Have a great day, everyone.